There are days when people do very normal things. Go to work, buy groceries, stand in line, press buttons, pay money. And then there are days when the brain decides to take an unscheduled day off. The problem is, those days almost never happen at home. They prefer to show up in public, in front of strangers, security cameras, and at least one person nearby thinking, wait, are they really doing that? These aren't major crimes, not bad people, just moments where humans are extremely confident and extremely wrong. In this video, there are 31 moments like that, 31 decisions that seem completely normal, and 31 endings no one expected. Because the scariest thing isn't being wrong, it's being wrong while you're absolutely sure you're right. Story 1. Buffet means all you can eat, not all you can take home in a trash bag. At an American-style buffet restaurant, everyone arrives with the same familiar idea. Eat until you're full, then stop. One woman had a different idea. She looked at the all-you-can-eat sign and interpreted it in a very creative way. Not eat as much as you like, but take as much as you want. While everyone else lined up for a few more pieces of chicken, she quietly stuffed fried shrimp, crab legs, and all kinds of seafood into a large trash bag hidden under her coat. Very calm, very confident, like this was a well-known buffet life hack. Things only started to fall apart when the trash bag began to swell unnaturally and make some very suspicious noises. Security walked over, asked a few questions, and then came the peak moment. She didn't apologize. She complained, saying the food wasn't as good as she expected. At that point, everyone understood the problem wasn't the buffet. It was confidence with absolutely no shame attached. Story 2. Paying at the drive-thru with a live alligator. In Florida, there's an unwritten rule: if a story sounds too ridiculous to be true, there's a very good chance it happened in Florida. A man pulled into a drive-thru like anyone else, placed his order, waited for his food. Everything was completely normal, right up until it was time to pay. Instead of cash or a card, he tossed a live alligator nearly 1 meter long straight through the service window. Very decisive, very confident, as if this were an alternative form of payment everyone just accepts. While the employee stood there completely frozen, the man seemed genuinely confused. According to his logic, alligators are rare animals. Rare animals have value, and value obviously means you can use it to pay. Police were called. The media showed up. The alligator was taken somewhere else. And Florida gained yet another story, proving that here the line between a bad idea and actually doing it is much thinner than you'd expect. Story 3. Driving with your feet because both hands are busy eating burritos. It was a very normal afternoon on an American street. No accidents, no chaos, just one car swerving slightly like it was unsure about the direction of its life. Police noticed and signaled the driver to pull over. When they approached, the reason became very clear: the driver wasn't using his hands. Both hands were busy holding 2 oversized burritos. As for steering the wheel, he was using his feet. When asked why, he answered completely seriously, "I was hungry, and I didn't want the food to get cold." No alcohol involved, no texting. Just a man who believed a little too much in his multitasking abilities. The officers stood there for a few seconds, unsure whether to ticket him for a traffic violation or admire his absolute commitment to lunch. In the end, he was told to pull over, finish eating, and then continue driving. Because sometimes the problem isn't a lack of laws, it's humans being a little too creative. Story 4. Using a Redbox machine to heat up a burrito. Inside an electronics store in the U.S., everything was perfectly calm. Customers stood in line. Employees scanned barcodes. Life moved along normally, until a woman appeared with a stone-cold burrito and an extremely strong belief. She placed the burrito on top of a Redbox movie rental machine, waited a few seconds, then picked it up to check. Not warm. She changed positions, tried the other side, even tried the disc slot. With every failed attempt, her confusion grew, while the crowd behind her went completely silent. No one laughed. No one stopped her. Everyone just watched like they were witnessing a piece of modern art. Someone almost spoke up to explain, then decided not to, because everyone understood when someone is fully convinced a machine is refusing to cooperate. Intervening can sometimes be more dangerous than just letting it happen. Eventually, she walked away, still annoyed. The burrito was still cold, and Redbox somehow had become the most misunderstood microwave in America. Story 5. Robbing a store, then calling an Uber home. At first, everything went pretty smoothly. Two people walked into a store full of confidence, grabbed items quickly, ran outside hearts pounding. Then they stopped, not because they heard police sirens, but because the parking lot was completely empty. No getaway car waiting, no backup plan, and no one had thought about one very basic question. After this, how do we get home? After a few seconds of serious thinking, one of them came up with a solution he believed was perfectly reasonable. He pulled out his phone and ordered an Uber. Pickup location right in front of the store they had just robbed. Destination home. The car arrived. The driver looked at his two out-of-breath passengers, then heard a news report on the radio about a robbery that had just happened at this exact location. He looked at them again, and the ride ended at the police station. No chase, no drama. Just a reminder that when you're doing something wrong, don't expect technology to save you. Story 6. Plugging a phone charger into a park sprinkler. In a perfectly ordinary park, a man looked at his phone's dying battery with a very familiar sense of panic. He scanned the area searching for an outlet. There was none. Just a grass sprinkler spraying water right in front of him. And he made a very serious decision. He plugged his phone charger into the sprinkler. He stood there and waited, stared at the screen, waiting for a technological miracle. No sparks, no explosions. And of course, the battery percentage didn't go up at all. People around him started to notice. They stopped. They watched. And then everyone went completely silent. No one laughed. No one intervened. Because to explain this situation, you'd have to start with way too many basic concepts at once. Eventually, the man unplugged the charger, sighed, and walked away. No climax, no drama. Just the quiet of the crowd and the lingering feeling that sometimes humans trust technology a little too much. Story 7. Having a picnic in the middle of a Walmart aisle. Walmart is a place where people go in, buy things, and leave as quickly as possible. But for one particular couple, it was the perfect spot for a picnic. Right in the middle of a main aisle, they laid out a checkered blanket, set down a wicker basket, and sat there eating casually as if this were a designated picnic area. Shoppers had to steer their carts around them. A few wheels lightly brushed the edge of the blanket, and that's when the couple got annoyed. They sighed, shook their heads, and complained that others were inconsiderate for interrupting their meal. In their minds, a public space had somehow turned into a private dining room that deserved total respect. No arguments broke out, just a lot of frozen stares. When an employee finally came over to intervene, they packed up with genuine irritation. Because to them, the problem wasn't the location, it was that the rest of the world refused to make way. Story 8. Returning a dried-out Christmas tree because it died. In late February, long after the Christmas season had disappeared, a man walked into a home goods store with a very serious expression. He dragged along a completely dried-out Christmas tree, most of the needles gone, looking like a prop from a post-apocalyptic movie. He placed the tree on the counter and said simply, "I want to return this. It's dead." The employee stood there for a few seconds trying to process the information. This tree had been neglected for over 2 months. No water, no sunlight, and unsurprisingly, no life left in it. When asked for the reason for the return, the man explained sincerely, "When I bought it, it was green. Now it's not." The employee tried to explain the concept of real Christmas trees, winter, and plants. The man listened, nodded, and then still asked, "So can I get a refund?" That was the moment when innocence ran straight into basic knowledge, and the losing side was the store employee. Story 9. Live streaming a theft. Some people use social media to show off their travels, some show off their food. And then there are people who decide to show off crime in real time. A man started a live stream while breaking into a car. The camera shook slightly. His voice was a whisper. Comments kept rolling in. He treated it like a live tutorial. This is the fastest way to open the door. What he didn't account for was that it wasn't just regular viewers watching. The police were watching too. While he was busy reading comments and bragging that everything's going great, law enforcement pinpointed his location using the live stream itself. No complicated investigation, no tracking needed. Just minutes later, the live stream ended abruptly. Not because the battery died, but because someone tapped him on the shoulder from behind. That broadcast became the most viewed stream of his entire career. And it was also the moment technology proved one thing: when you get too confident in front of the camera, it turns on you very fast. Story 10. Trying to escape a robbery by locking yourself in. Everything started like a low-budget action movie. A man broke into a store after closing hours very confident his plan was airtight. No witnesses, no alarm, no trouble. Until it was time to leave. The door wouldn't open. He tried the back door. Nothing. A side door, still locked. In a moment of panic, he realized a very uncomfortable truth: he had locked himself inside. No exit, no shortcut. And after a few minutes of pounding on the doors and complete futility, he made his final decision. He called 911. The call was very serious. He explained that he was trapped inside a store, conveniently skipping the detail of why he was there at midnight. Police arrived, unlocked the door, and escorted him outside, in handcuffs. No chase, no dramatic climax. Just a perfect twist that made everyone laugh. The most effective way to escape a robbery is to lock yourself in. Story 11. Parking vertically in a parking lot. Rush hour. A packed parking lot. Horns blaring, heavy sighs, and that look that says, "I just need one spot." One driver scanned the area and came up with a very bold idea. If there were no horizontal spaces left, why not park vertically? He pulled forward, adjusted the angle, and hit the gas with his own version of mathematical confidence. The result was a car stuck halfway up, nose tilted downward, wedged tightly between two other cars like an abstract art installation. The entire parking lot paused. No more honking. People just watched. Someone pulled out a phone to record. A tow truck arrived. The driver stepped out, stared at the scene for a few seconds, then took a photo before getting to work, because even he knew this was a rare moment. Eventually, the car was towed away, but the lesson stayed behind. Creativity is valuable, but math is not open to negotiation. Story 12. Filling a pothole with cement and clogging the entire neighborhood's drainage. In a quiet residential area, there was a pothole sitting right in front of one man's house. It wasn't huge, but it was just annoying enough to make him a little more irritated every time a car drove over it. Eventually, he decided not to wait for the city anymore. He chose the path of self-reliance DIY. One morning, he brought out a few bags of quick, dry cement and poured it straight into the pothole. Very decisive, very confident. Like this was a rapid urban improvement project. The problem was that the pothole sat directly on top of a storm drain. When heavy rain came, the water had nowhere to go. It backed up, spilled onto the street, then flooded into the neighbors' homes. Within just a few hours, the street turned into a real-life lesson in infrastructure. Drainage trucks arrived. City workers showed up. The pothole was gone. But the name of the guy who fixed it stayed with the neighborhood, because sometimes a personal solution creates very public consequences. Story 13. Falling asleep in your own court hearing. The courtroom that day was completely formal. Everyone sat up straight, lawyers focused. The judge looked serious. There was only one person who was completely relaxed: the defendant. He sat in his chair, arms folded, eyes slowly closing, with a very casual thought. It's probably not my turn yet. A few minutes passed in total silence. Then a sound appeared. Not loud, but very clear. Snoring. The entire courtroom turned at once. The lawyer froze. The gallery murmured softly, and the judge had to bang the gavel not to deliver a verdict, but to wake the defendant up. He jolted awake, looking around in confusion like someone who had just missed a flight. No one laughed out loud, but everyone remembered it, because it was the perfect moment, proving one thing: the place where you need to be the most alert in your life is also where people sleep the best, when they believe they're just waiting for their turn. Story 14. Robbing a store with a transparent plastic bag. When it comes to disguises, most people think of mass hoodies, or at least something you can't see through. But these two went with a minimalist approach. They walked into a convenience store with clear plastic bags pulled tightly over their heads. Very neat, very confident, as if technically covering the face was all that mattered. By their logic, if there's a bag, it's a disguise. The fact that you can see the face through it, not an important detail. The problem was that this store had HD security cameras, very clear, very sharp. They captured every facial expression, every glance, and even the moment the two looked straight into the camera to check if it was working. When police reviewed the footage, there was no need for analysis, no zooming in, no guessing. Perfect identification, fast and easy. Because some plans fail not due to a lack of tools, but because the people behind them believe covering the face is enough, while completely forgetting to cover the brain. Story 15. Taking a driver's license photo in medieval armor. The DMV is already a place that tests human patience. That day, it also tested history. A man showed up to take his driver's license photo wearing a full set of medieval armor, metal chest plate, steel gloves, and a helmet covering his entire face. When the employee asked him to remove the helmet, he objected immediately. His reasoning was very clear. I dress like this every day. This is my identity. The argument lasted longer than the wait for a number to be called. The employee tried to explain facial identification requirements. He meanwhile stood firm defending his right to be a modern-day knight. In the end, under the pressure of regulations and the stares of the waiting room, he reluctantly removed the helmet. The photo was taken. The record was saved. The armor went back on immediately afterward. But the lesson remained: personal identity is important. It's just not always compatible with official ID photos. Story 16. Grilling sausages on a subway train during rush hour. Rush hour on the subway already comes with plenty of smells, sweat, perfume, and collective exhaustion. But that day, there was an entirely new one. A man stepped onto a packed train car, set down a small gas stove, and started grilling sausages. Very calm, very professional. As if the subway car were a licensed food stall. At first, passengers thought they were imagining things. Then the smoke started rising. The smell of sausage spread faster than the train itself. The man flipped the sausages while calling out prices, treating it like a business opportunity during a delay. A few minutes later, the train made an emergency stop. Security staff asked everyone to leave the car, not because of a fire, not because of an accident, but because of grilling in the wrong place. The car slowly emptied. The sausages never finished cooking, and the lesson was very clear: not every crowded place is a market where you can set up a stall. Story 17. Paying with an unplayed lottery ticket. At a supermarket checkout, a woman stood there with a cart full of groceries and an extremely strong belief. When it was her turn, she didn't pull out a wallet. She pulled out a lottery ticket. Not a winning ticket, not a scratch-off, but a ticket for tonight's draw. By her logic, this was a potential investment. What if it wins? She said it with complete confidence, as if hope could be accepted as advance payment. The cashier froze for a few seconds, trying to explain that the store does not accept payment in future possibilities. She argued back that the probability still existed. The debate lasted longer than the line itself. One side talked about policy, the other talked about belief. Eventually, a manager was called. The result didn't change. Because in the real world, hope is a beautiful thing. It just unfortunately has no legal value. Story 18. Lying in the road is a human speed bump. In a quiet residential neighborhood, a man grew increasingly frustrated with cars speeding past his house. Signs didn't work. Complaints went unheard. And then he came up with a very direct solution. One afternoon, he walked into the middle of the road and lay down. No hand signals, no warnings. Just lying there like a flesh-and-bone speed bump. Cars approaching slammed on their brakes. Not out of respect for traffic laws, but because no one wanted to run over a man who was clearly very committed. Traffic immediately fell into chaos. Neighbors gathered. And of course, the police arrived. When asked what he was doing, he answered honestly, "I just want them to slow down." The intention was good. No one denied that. But the outcome was very clear. He didn't make cars slow down in the long run. He just put himself on the ground and turned himself into the perfect example of the phrase "good intentions, terrible execution." Story 19. Driving a motorized sofa on public roads. On a fairly busy public road, police spotted a vehicle moving slowly but looking extremely relaxed. No familiar engine noise, no steering wheel, just a sofa rolling along. The man sat comfortably like he was in his living room, back against soft cushions, hands on the armrests, with a small engine confidently attached underneath. According to him, this was the dream vehicle. Comfortable, spacious, a place to put a drink and no need for air conditioning. When he was pulled over, he was genuinely surprised. He explained his logic very calmly. It has wheels, it has an engine, and it moves. So why shouldn't it be allowed on the road? The officers stared at the sofa for a few seconds as if reevaluating the entire concept of transportation. Then they told him to stop immediately. No accident, no chase. Just one very clear conclusion. Creativity deserves praise, but creativity does not equal legality. Story 20. Taking a selfie with a giant tortoise at the zoo. In a crowded zoo, a teenager lingered for a long time in front of the giant tortoise enclosure. The tortoise lay still under the sun so slow it looked like a living statue. And in his mind that meant only one thing: this would be a great photo. Ignoring warning signs and a low barrier, he climbed inside to take a selfie. By his logic, an animal that doesn't move can't be dangerous. He stood next to the tortoise, adjusted his angle, posed, and raised his phone with total focus. Around him, visitors held their breath. Zoo staff rushed over in panic. He was pulled out before anything worse could happen. No injuries, no accident. Just one thing that never happened: the photo was never posted. Because that moment reminded everyone that animals are not props, and no amount of likes is worth risking safety. Story 21. Trying to pay for an amusement park ticket with arcade tokens. At the entrance of an amusement park, a man stood in line with his family in a bag full of arcade tokens. When it was his turn, he poured a handful of tokens onto the counter like he was about to play pinball. By his very confident logic, tokens are money for games, an amusement park is a place for fun. So this was clearly fun money, meant for a fun place. The employee looked at the pile of shiny tokens, then back at the ticket prices, paused for a few seconds, and tried to explain that the ticket booth was not a pinball machine. The argument dragged on. He insisted that paper money is also just paper, while tokens were literally designed to be spent on fun. People in line behind him started sighing. A manager was called. The result didn't change. He gathered up his tokens with visible frustration, as if a great economic theory had just been rejected. Because in the end, money is only truly fun when it's used in the right place. Story 22. An expired coupon is a constitutional violation. In a small coffee shop, a woman handed over a coupon that had expired a long time ago. The employee checked the date, smiled, and politely refused. The conversation should have ended there. But for her, this was no longer about coffee. It was about civil rights. She loudly claimed that refusing the coupon was a violation of the Constitution. She cited freedom of choice, equal treatment, and the spirit of America. Her voice kept rising until the entire cafe stopped to listen. The employee stood still, one hand on the coffee machine, trying to understand when a latte became a legal issue. A manager was called. The coupon was still not accepted. She left the cafe visibly upset. The shop returned to its quiet routine. Because not every inconvenience in life is oppression, and not every piece of paper has legal power forever. Story 23. Bringing a hidden weapon inside a laptop through airport security. At airport security, everyone just wants to get through the scanner as fast as possible. A man stepped forward with complete confidence and placed his laptop in the tray like every other passenger. By his logic, if you hide a weapon inside a laptop, it blends in with the electronics and no one will notice. A plan that sounded smart. Inside his head. The scanner ran, the screen lit up, and the security staff immediately saw the thing he believed was invisible. No need to zoom in, no need to guess. The image was so clear it almost felt polite. The line behind him stopped. He was calmly asked to step aside. The laptop was taken. The questions began. His flight ended right there at the security checkpoint. Not because he was late, but because of a very simple truth: security technology isn't as dumb as you think, and confidence doesn't make it blind. Story 24. Paying court fees with cocaine. Inside a serious courtroom, a man stepped up to the counter with a very cooperative attitude. He had just been ordered to pay a court fee. No arguing, no complaints. He simply pulled out a small bag and placed it on the counter. Cocaine. By his very logical thinking, it had value. And if something has value, it can be used to pay, at least in his world. The reaction was almost immediate. The clerk froze. The officers in the room moved faster than any administrative process ever could. No long explanations needed. The court fee hadn't been resolved yet, but the list of charges was updated instantly. Another line added, very clearly. The hearing ended earlier than expected. Not because of efficiency, but because of a basic lesson payment doesn't mean handing over whatever you personally believe is valuable and misunderstanding that concept usually comes with very real consequences. Story 25. Using a dog wash station to bathe a child. In a quiet pet store, the self-service dog wash area worked exactly as designed. Dogs and dogs out, everyone happy. Until one parent showed up with his child. By his very practical logic, the dog wash had water, a shower hose, soap. And most importantly, it was cheap and convenient. So using it for a kid didn't seem that different. He placed the child into the tub, turned on the water, and started bathing them with full focus as if this were a long-established, perfectly legal service. The store employees froze for a few seconds, then rushed over with faces that mixed shock and pure confusion. The conversation happened fast, very tense, and very hard to explain using normal logic. The child was taken out. The wash station was shut down. The store returned to normal. Leaving behind one very clear lesson in life: convenient does not mean correct, and not everything with a water hose is meant to be used on humans. Story 26. Paying a fine with origami folded from loose change. After receiving a ticket, a man decided not just to pay the fine, but to send a message. He didn't protest with words. He protested with art. Instead of paying normally, he spent hours folding every single small bill into tiny origami shapes. Birds, boats, carefully made pieces that clearly took time and effort. In his mind, this was a statement to the system. The full amount was paid just in a way that forced the recipient to think about it. When he brought it in, the clerk stared at the stack of origami for a few seconds, then sighed. The money was still counted. The money was still accepted. And the fine remained fully valid. No discount, no exception, just extra processing time. In the end, the message came through very clearly. Creativity is admirable, but creativity does not cancel obligation. Story 27. Inflating a truck tire with your mouth. On the side of a quiet road, a truck was stopped with a flat tire. No jack, no spare tire. Just one man and an extremely strong belief in himself. He knelt down, pressed his mouth to the tire valve, and started blowing. Very serious, very determined, as if enough willpower could convince physics to cooperate. After each breath, he stopped to check. The tire was still flat. He kept going, face red, lungs burning, refusing to give up. Passing drivers slowed down just to make sure they weren't hallucinating. No miracle happened. The tire didn't move at all. Only the man grew more exhausted and confused. Eventually, he collapsed onto the curb, gasping for air, staring at the tire like it had personally betrayed him. Because that was the moment a basic truth became clear. Willpower can overcome many things, but it can't defeat physics, and the human body always has limits. Story 28. Returning an item because it didn't meet expectations. In a perfectly ordinary retail store, a woman walked up to the return counter with a genuinely disappointed expression. The product was untouched. The receipt was complete. Everything was valid. The reason for the return was written very clearly, did not meet expectations. The employee asked for more details, assuming there might be a defect or malfunction. The woman shook her head. The product worked perfectly fine. It just wasn't what she had imagined. The explanation began. The employee talked about product descriptions. She talked about how it felt when she bought it. One side relied on reality. The other relied on hope. The debate went on long enough for the people in line behind her to memorize the return policy. Eventually, a manager appeared. The outcome didn't change. She left clearly dissatisfied. And the store gained another familiar lesson. Reality has no obligation to match anyone's imagination. Story 29. Using the wrong fix and making the damage worse. It all started with very good intentions. A man noticed a minor issue with something at home and decided to fix it himself. No technician, no manual, just confidence and a few half-watched videos. He used tools for the wrong purpose on a job outside his expertise. A little bending, a little tightening, and a bit of this should be fine. Within minutes, the small problem turned into a neatly packaged disaster. What was stuck snapped. What was loose broke. The device stopped working completely. When a real professional was finally called in, the first sentence was painfully familiar. "What did you do to this?" The repair costs multiplied several times over the original issue. The good intention didn't disappear, but the consequences were very real. Because there's one important life skill everyone should learn: know when to fix things and know when to stop. Story 30. Misunderstanding a public sign. A sign stood there very clearly. Big letters, bold colors. Nothing about its meaning was vague. But to one particular man, the sign was just a suggestion. He skimmed it, interpreted it in a way that benefited him, or at least pretended to. Instead of stopping, he kept going. Climbed over, went inside. Did exactly the thing the sign was trying to prevent. The consequences arrived almost instantly. No need for guesswork, no need for analysis. Just seconds later, everyone around understood exactly why that sign existed. Staff showed up. The warning was repeated this time in a human voice. He backed away, looking confused, like he had just learned something new about the world. No one yelled. No one laughed out loud. Just a very familiar conclusion. Public signs aren't there for decoration, and they exist because someone before you once did exactly what you just did. Story 31. Calling 911 because a vending machine ate $1. A man stood in front of a vending machine with a very familiar feeling, thirsty and impatient. He fed a $1 bill into the machine. The machine made a whir. The money disappeared. The soda did not. This is a problem everyone has experienced before. Normally, people sigh and look for the customer service number taped on the side of the machine. But to him, this wasn't a technical issue. This was a robbery. He started getting angry, arguing with the machine like he was confronting a suspect. Then he pulled out his phone and called 911, reporting that his money had just been stolen. The suspect, a vending machine. Police actually showed up. The crowd stopped. Phones came out to record. In the end, he got his $1 back. But the cost was much higher, a moment of embarrassment permanently saved on the internet. Because not every $1 problem requires an emergency response from society. Looking back at the 31 stories we've just seen, one thing becomes pretty clear. It's not that Americans are stranger than anyone else. It's just that humans everywhere are the same. When confidence goes unchecked. No one wakes up thinking, today, I'm going to do something stupid in public. But things always start small. A decision that feels reasonable. A thought like, it'll probably be fine. And then it escalates. Now it's your turn. Have you ever witnessed a moment like that, or worse? Have you ever been the main character and only realized it later? Leave a comment and share your story, like if you laughed at least once. And subscribe if you enjoy stories that are funny and painfully real. Because the next time a small moment starts to spiral, there's a good chance you're standing right next to it.